So this book report is over. Sorry, 1 second. This book report is over the Dracula story by Bram Stoker. Overall, the story to me is a good one if you can understand the lecture or the intellect that they use throughout the story. It's a really good story. Basically, it just talks about the encounters between Dracula and the common people who he does come in contact with. There's many places where the sceneries are changed. It talks as if, or the story is told as if from different accounts from different people, and how Dracula has affected all of them. In my opinion, the book itself, I give it a 8.5 out of 10, just because of the fact that the way it was written, it was written a long time ago, but the way it was written, it would make a reader hard to understand what all is going on. But overall, since the first encounter with Dracula, with Jonathan, through Lisa's encounters, through Mrs. Stoker's encounters and everything, through the doctor's encounters, it all gives like a sense of suspenseful, suspenseful knowledge. Because throughout the story, a lot of things happen where boys disappear, bite marks on a lot of citizens' necks throughout the city. And when you're the victim of the bite, you are somewhat left in the dark about what's going on, but everybody else around you knows what's going on and what's going to happen to you. One example is with Lisa. Lisa felt like these weird symptoms, weird nightmares of Dracula, or a shadowy figure, because she doesn't know. A shadowy figure just appearing to her at night, and random bite marks on her neck. She had a garlic necklace at one point. The garlic necklace was taken off. And each night after night, she looked even paler and paler. So she eventually died. And the only person that knew absolutely what was going on was the doctor at the time. Just probably from Dracula's previous encounters and everybody going to him because he's a well-known doctor in the community. And it even talks about holy references in the book. The use of holy water, the communion crackers, the rosary, a lot of biblical references to back away from the demon spirit that is Dracula. These are often even conveyed in stories that we read earlier throughout the school year through Young Goodman Brown in his night and day type of persona, where night is equal to the heavenly and holy images of the people in his town, whereas when it does come nightfall, it shows all of the deceitful and lies that are told throughout the city. Even in, I don't recall the name of the story, but I do remember it was a story where this girl was seen as pure in her family's eyes, but then when she went out with her friends, she would always leave the spot from where she was from and always get into trouble with whoever she encountered, until she finally came across a guy who had all these devil references, 666 all over his car, devil horns poking out of the car, and just being very aggressive with her, cursing at her. You can see similarities throughout the Holy Bible and just references to Christ throughout all three of these stories. For my creative project, I did journal entries on Jonathan Harker's experiences with Dracula, and how it did affect him in the end. Throughout the story, excuse me, throughout the story, he does get older since his encounter with Dracula. Just from the fact, it's just something weird about being in Dracula's presence that makes everything just go out of whack. But from his journal entries I wrote May 4th, it says, I have received the invitation to Dracula's castle, but upon directions they act as if they cannot understand. They cross their hearts, and the landlady gives me a rosary and tells me to be careful. So this refers back to the calling of Jonathan at the beginning of the story, receiving his letter from Dracula, and everybody going into like a kind of terror and uneasiness about the words Dracula, you know. Next is excerpts from May 7th and May 8th. He says, food is set out for me, but no one is in sight. There are no mirrors in this castle, and Dracula explains that his medieval castle is called Carfax and resides at daybreak. So when he says he resides at daybreak, that means that he stops any communication with any of his fellow guests at daybreak. On the May 8th, today is the 8th, and I am shaving when I see Dracula himself standing over me while I'm shaving. He then yells at me and tells me to be careful of drawing blood, that it is very dangerous in Transylvania, and that Jonathan himself believes that he is no longer a guest but a prisoner there. This calls back at the time to where Dracula is standing over him. He's like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He has a mirror. Jonathan notices that there is no reflection in the mirror of Dracula himself. That's when Dracula takes upon that there's a cut on Jonathan's chin. Dracula then attacks Jonathan and leads to a scuffle. Dracula finally snaps out of it and says, it's not okay to draw blood here, you know, because he is a bloodsucker. So now we jump to September 29th, where it says Jonathan travels, or it says I travel to meet Mr. Billington and get to the bottom of Dracula's castle purchase. Now at this point, Jonathan has escaped Dracula's castle. No one had heard from him for a while, just thinking that he had ended up sick or that he was just going ghost, I guess. He just didn't hear from him again, said he was with Dracula, he was being taken care of. You know the rest. September 30th, hearing all of these things Dracula can do is bringing an uneasiness to me about it all. He is really a supernatural being, and I'm lucky to escape alive. So this calls back as to where everyone is gathered having a conversation about what happened to Lisa and just trying to find out what they can do to stop Dracula from doing this to someone else. And upon hearing this, Jonathan is just in awe about a kind of being that can do all these things, you know, appearing out of mist, you know, transforming into a bat, and then just being deceitful, I guess. Dracula brings this certain type of terror to the town, per se. October 1st, he says that his wife is pale and weak. I fear that Dracula may have gotten to her too. I pray this is not the case. Now this refers back to the bite marks on his wife's neck. This, for him, is the most terrorizing thing that can happen to him. He is losing a loved one in his eyes, and she is dying slowly. She was a big part of this whole operation to take down Dracula, and for her to play a role in dying due to Dracula's hands it's a big burden on himself to, you know, kill Dracula once for all and free her of Dracula's curse. Next he says, and finally he says, my wife gets more and more anxious as night approaches. It feels as if she is calling to him. Now this comes from the aspect of that when excuse me, when Dracula does bite you, he, in a sense, inserts his evil into you. it even calls back to a story saying that when Dracula bit her and sucked her blood, he forced her to suck blood from his chest, meaning of a demonic tie to them both. In this case, this just shows how, you know, in life, people are gonna come and go. You're gonna meet certain people in and out of life, and just be careful who you tie yourself to. Is what I got from it. It shows that not everybody is there for your good. People are deceitful. In certain things and how you interact with other people determines the type of tie you have with your life. So yeah, that's my review on Dracula.